add 10. So I add 10. This cancels. I'm left with 15x is equal to negative 12 plus 10, which gives me negative 2. I divide by 15. I divide by 15. So my x is equal to negative 2 over 15. And it's the same answer as we got before. So that is another way you can do it. If you don't like this method, you can leave it. Stick with the first method. I'll leave that up to you. Our next example is negative 2.5b is equal to negative 3.1. So first up again, I look at the side of my variable. This time my number is attached. That's a coefficient. So how do I get rid of this number to get b by itself? This is being multiplied together. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So divide by negative 2.5. So divide this side by negative 2.5. So my b is going to be equal to 1.24. And that is my final answer. Most of your questions today will be a single step, and we'll get into more complicated questions as the days go. Our next example, example number 5, is 3x is equal to negative 2/3. And like I said in the beginning, if you don't like the negative in the middle, you can put it with the numerator. So I always look at the side of the variable. If I look at this side, I have the 3. I want to get rid of the 3. So I divide by 3. So x is going to be equal to negative 2/3 divided by 3. Remember, the same thing as 3 over 1. And now you have to remember your division rules. I never divide fractions. I always multiply them. So my x is going to be equal to negative 2/3 times, I take the reciprocal, 1 over 3. And now I multiply my top numbers together. So my x is going to be equal to negative 2. And then I multiply my bottom numbers together. So my denominator is going to be 9. So your final answer is going to be x is equal to negative 2 over 9. Again, if you don't like fractions or working with fractions, we can use method 2, which is to multiply with your LCD. So in this case, my LCD is 3. So I'm going to multiply every single term by 3. So I'm going to multiply this side by 3. I'm also going to multiply this side by 3. 3 times 3x just gives you 9x equal to here. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 divided by 3 gives you negative 2. And now I have no fractions, and I follow my rules for solving. I look at the side of the variable. It's a coefficient, so I divide by 9. Then I divide this side by 9. So my x is going to be equal to negative 2 over 9. This method does take a little bit to get used to, but it makes solving a lot faster as you get into grade 10 and grade 11. So our next example is x over 1.3 is equal to 0.8. In this case, if I look at the side of the variable, which is still on the left-hand side, I'll realize that my number is on the bottom. So it's x divided by 1.3. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to times this side by 1.3. That'll cancel out, so I'm left with x. But remember, now I have to multiply this side by 1.3. So when I do this, I get 1.04 as my final answer. All right? So if you look at it, the variable is being divided by 1.3. So in order to get rid of division, I have to multiply. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the opposite side. And we have 2 more examples left in the lesson. So, example question number 7. I have x over 2 is equal to 5 over 6. So again, you can do this question as 2 different ways. So if I look at the side of the variable, because that's always my starting point, I know it's x divided by 2. So on this side, if I'm dividing by 2, the opposite is multiplying by 2. So I multiply this side by 2, which leaves me with x, which means I have to multiply that side by 2. So it becomes 5 over 6 times it by 2, which is the same thing as 2 over 1. And when I multiply my top numbers together, and I multiply my bottom numbers together. So I get x is equal to 10 over 6. And you have to always remember your fractions have to be in lowest terms. So I can divide by 2. So I get 5 over 3. That will be my final answer. And if you like method 2 by finding the LCD, you can do it that way as well. Your LCD in this case would be 12. So I'd multiply every term by 12 and go from there. And the last example for today is a mixed fraction. What do I do if I have a mixed fraction? So negative 1/4 x is equal to 1 3/4. So your first step every single time is to change your mixed fraction into an improper. Remember, when we have a negative, I ignore it. So I go 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 gives me 5. That becomes negative 5 over 4x is equal to, on this side, it goes 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 gives me 7. So 7 over 4. Now I look at the side of my variable. I want to get rid of that fraction. So in order to get rid of this fraction, because that's your coefficient, you're going to divide. So I divide this side. Whole side is being divided by negative 5 over 4, because I'll cancel this out. So my x is going to be equal to 7 over 4 divided by negative 5 over 4. And always remember, I can't divide fractions. I have to multiply. So it becomes 7 over 4 times, take the reciprocal, 4 over negative 5. I multiply my top numbers together. That gives me 28. Multiply my bottom numbers together. That gives me negative 20. And then I have to put it into lowest term. So a common is 4. So that's equal to negative 7 over 5. That's my final answer. With this question, again, you can use a second method. I'll show you in this example. So if you don't like dealing with fractions on all the fraction rules, the first step is the same. So I'm going to get negative 5 over 4. X is equal to 7 over 4. Now my LCD is 4, so I multiply every single term by 4. Right? 4 times negative 5 gives me negative 20. Negative 20 divided by 4 gives me negative 5x. 7 times 4 is 28. 28 divided by 4 is 7. So now I divide by negative 5. I divide by negative 5. So x is equal to negative 7 over 5. And remember, it doesn't matter where the negative goes. Negative can be with the numerator. It can be with the denominator. It can be in the middle. Okay? So that's the end of our lesson. Hope everything went well. I will post a worksheet. We won't be using a workbook, so I'll post your assignment onto Teams. If you have any questions and concerns, please email me or send me a message through Teams. Thank you.